Welcome to VW 1.5. Today we're going to review solving quadratic equations. So the first thing we're going to do is a couple easy ones. Notice how this thing already equals 0. That's good because it allows us to use what's called the zero product property. What that means is we can just factor it and solve it. So from here we can see that x is equal to 0 and negative 6, because if you plug in 0 here, 0 times whatever this is 0, plug in negative 6 to this one, and that would make that 0. So that's what we're trying to achieve when it's equal to 0. So you notice this equation doesn't equal 0. So you always want your equation to equal 0. We absolutely need this to happen. So we're just going to rewrite it. 2x squared minus x minus 3, that's equal to 0. Now we factor it. That's 2x minus 3 and x plus 1. So x would equal negative 1 and 3 over 2. And we're done. Next technique is called the square root method. Now, this is easy because you guys have learned this before, but I want to show you the intermediate step that lots of people don't show. When you root x squared, recall that means absolute value of x. The root of 5 is just the root of 5. That's important to know because the absolute value is what's going to create your plus or minus situation. So right there would be showing all your steps. So for b, let's try to do it again. We're going to square root that. The absolute value of x minus 2, that's going to be 4. That would imply that x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 4. And now we can see the answer. X is 2 plus or minus 4. So x must be 6 or negative 2. Now for this example, we're going to have to complete the square. So I'll highlight that just so you guys know the technique, complete the square. Now there are lots of ways to do this. This is how I typically do it. I'm going to first move this number to the other side. 2x squared minus 8x, that's an equal 5. And I like to leave a blank here to remind myself that I need to complete the square. The next thing you want to do is you want this coefficient to be 1. So I'll multiply the entire thing by 1/2. So x squared minus 4x, leave your big blank, that's equal to 5 over 2. Once you're in this situation, now you can complete the square. Now if you've forgotten how to do it, that's okay. On the side, I'll write complete the square. You want to be in this situation, x squared plus bx, and then there's a big blank there, and that equals some constant. I'll call that k to make it easier. That term you're missing is simply the middle term b over 2 squared. So you half it and square it. So that's what we're looking to do to complete the square. So here, half of 4 is 2, square it, that would be 4. So we add 4 to both sides, like that. Now we do that because look on the left side now. That factors to x minus 2 squared. And that would equal, let's add 5 over 2 and 4, that's 13 over 2. And now we can use our square root property. We'll root both sides. You don't need to show the absolute value step here, as long as you understand it. Let's write x minus 2, that'd be plus or minus root 26 over 2 after you rationalize. And let's put it all together. So x would equal 4 plus or minus root 26 over 2. Now notice how I put it as one fraction. You could write it like this, and the book actually writes it this way too. 2 plus or minus root 26 over 2. I just like writing it as one fraction as a personal preference. Let's try a harder example. We're going to do the exact same first step. We're going to move over that 1, and we're going to multiply everything by a third because I want this 3 right here to be a 1. So now I have x squared minus 5 over 3x. Here's my blank. And that should equal negative 1/3. Now that number I need, just half 5/3 and square it. And notice how I'm just going to write 5 over 6, which is half of 5/3. And I'm just going to write squared. I'm not actually going to calculate that, even though it's pretty easy to do. On the other side, though, I am going to simplify. 25 over 36. Now the reason I'm doing that is just to save myself a little bit of thinking time. Because on the left, when I factor it, I'm just going to use that same number right there. That's x minus 5 over 6 squared. And that's going to equal, let's add negative 1/3 and 25 over 36. That's 13 over 36. Now we're going to square root everything. So x minus 5 over 6, that's going to equal plus or minus root 13 over 6. And now I put it together. X must be 5 plus or minus root 13, all divided by 6. And that's it. Now the last one to talk about is going to be right here. We're going to use the quadratic formula. So I know all of you learned it already, but I want to quickly review it. That's opposite b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And I want to highlight this part in particular. The b squared minus 4ac has a name. It's called the discriminant. So in Algebra 2, I would expect you to just do it pretty fluently. Let's move that right here. I'm going to grab this equation and rewrite it for us. That's 3x squared minus 4x plus 2 equals 0. And let's just plug it into the quadratic formula. So opposite b, that's 4, plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times 6 all over 6. And I'm going to highlight this part. Now this part you might notice, that's kind of interesting because 16 minus 24, that becomes the root of negative 8. So in Algebra 1, what you would normally do is stop and say no solution. Now in Algebra 2, we're going to be a bit more precise. We're going to say b squared minus 4ac, meaning this expression or this thing you calculated, is less than 0. Therefore, there is no real solution. Because later in our class, you're going to learn that there actually are solutions here, they're just not real. And that's going to be our complete answer for this question. Okay, so good luck on the rest of the questions, and bring your questions to class.